Good afternoon, I'm Katie Wilson and you are watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Trump to decide on US involvement in Israel-Iran conflict within 2 weeks. A high-level meeting between Iran and European officials takes place in Geneva. Denmark to push for Ukraine's EU membership during presidency. As the Israel-Iran conflict enters its 8th day, the White House says President Donald Trump wants 2 more weeks before deciding on possible US military involvement. Our correspondent Ubi Shabandar has more from Washington, D.C.
Wanting to give more time for a diplomatic solution, President Trump has said that he wants at least 2 more weeks before he decides whether to order U.S. military involvement with the ongoing Israeli strikes against Iran's nuclear and strategic missile facilities. The president has been briefed by senior intelligence and military advisors on potential war scenarios that would involve the U.S. bombing of Iran's most prized and heavily fortified nuclear facility, Fordow. According to the latest reports here in Washington, the U.S. president wants to make sure that disabling Fordow would be necessary, given the intelligence community's assessment on just how close Iran could be to produce a nuclear weapon in a relatively short period of time. The director for Central Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, has reportedly told Trump in private meetings that he believes that Iran is very close to possessing nuclear weapons, though no formal order has been given by Iranian leadership to build the bomb, per U.S. intelligence. President Trump told senior aides that he has approved of attack plans for Iran, but he was holding off to see if Tehran would abandon its nuclear program. One key question weighing in on President Trump's mind: if the U.S. does join Israel's war and drop its massive bunker busters, will they actually destroy Iran's most heavily fortified nuclear facility? Some Israeli officials are concerned that Iran can rebuild its ability to produce a nuclear weapon if the Fordow facility is not neutralized. And according to media reports, Pentagon officials have told Trump that they are confident that they have the necessary weapons capable of penetrating and destroying Fordow. But it's not clear if Trump is totally convinced. Trump has told reporters earlier this week that he wants to hold off on making a final decision regarding Iran until the very last minute, given concerns of a broader and prolonged war in the Arabian Gulf and Middle East. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes seem to have damaged the Arak nuclear complex. That's a major Iranian nuclear facility that is capable of producing plutonium, which at a high enough enrichment rate can be used to build a nuclear weapon. For the U.S. president to agree to the strike on Iran, he would have to be confident that the benefits outweigh the risks and that the U.S. military involvement would guarantee the total eradication of Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions. Ube Shabander for A News, Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, growing numbers of civilians are fleeing from the unrest in Tehran, with many finding refuge in the central city of Yazd, where hostels are offering free accommodation.
With Israel and Iran's airstrikes now stretching into a second week, more civilians are leaving Tehran in search of safety. In the central city of Yazd, local hostels have opened their doors to people displaced by the unrest.
My friend urged me to take all important and valuable items, and she said there were some free hotels in Yazd. She said we could stay until the dust settles. On the road, we had a lot of stress over fuel and GPS malfunction. We finally got here and they readily gave us accommodation. We've been here for 2 nights. Yazd is much safer than other cities.
Hostel manager Amir Khani said the decision to provide shelter was a matter of responsibility and compassion.
Since some people have problems for accommodation, we decided to help those having difficulties finding free accommodation.
According to the human rights activist news agency, Israeli airstrikes in Iran have killed 639 people, including senior military figures and nuclear scientists. Israel says at least 24 civilians have been killed by Iranian missile attacks.
Meanwhile, in Israel, Iranian missile strikes have left deep scars not only on people and buildings but on the future of science. That's according to Israeli scientists. The Weizmann Institute of Science, a world-renowned research centre, has extensively been damaged in last Sunday's attack, a strike that could set research back years.
Scientists of the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot looked at the extensive damage caused by an Iranian missile on Sunday to see if they could save some of their research. While no one was killed, it caused heavy damage to multiple labs, snuffing out years of scientific research and sending a chilling message to Israeli scientists that they and their expertise are now targets in the escalating conflict with Iran.
We were hit by an Iranian missile attack that was early Sunday morning. Several of our buildings were damaged. 2 of our buildings were directly hit. Luckily for us, there were no casualties, so there were nobody in the buildings. The buildings were empty, and I think that's the most important thing. None of our students, postdocs, faculty, researchers, nobody was hurt. We did our best to save as much of the samples as we could from the labs, from the buildings, while we were fighting the fire, for example. Clearly, a lot has been destroyed.
The strike on the institute came amid a barrage of missiles and drones launched from Iran towards Israel in retaliation for Israel's strikes, which began Friday, the 13th of June. The extensive damage could potentially set back the research for years.
It will take us a lot of time to essentially recover from this, because some of these experiments really took a lot of time, and we collected tissues. For example, experiment that ran for half a year or 1 year, and you collect the entire process, you collect the tissues from, and you wanted to analyze all these tissue in one day, and you realize that there are no tissues. Everything is gone. I would estimate that it will take us about a year to get into a full gear of research and with everything working again. But again, I want to emphasize that some of this research we will not be able to recover.
The Weizmann Institute, like many Israeli research centers, has ties to the defense sector, including collaborations with firms like Elbit Systems. It's one reason experts believe it became a target in this escalating conflict.
Diplomatic efforts are underway in Geneva as Iran meets with European representatives to try to prevent the Israel-Iran conflict from escalating. The talks are between Iran and European leaders from the UK, Germany, France and the EU. Ahead of the meeting, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister emphasised defending the country's sovereignty, while Israel's UN ambassador in Geneva demanded a complete rollback of Iran's nuclear programme. Now, Ukraine fears its conflict with Russia could be overshadowed by the escalating Iran-Israel war. Rising oil prices and diverted global attention may weaken military support for Kyiv at a crucial time. Joining us live from St. Petersburg is John Kavelich, Senior Editor at The Issue Insight. Thank you for being with us. Now, how is the Iran-Israel conflict affecting international focus on Ukraine?
It's superseded it, and this is the reality of the global media process. And basically, whatever is new pushes out whatever is old. And right now, Israel and Iran are overshadowing Russia, Ukraine. The Russians are happy about it. The Ukrainians are not. But the reality is, until there is some finality with respect to what Israel is going to do in Iran and whether the U.S. will assist, until that moment comes, we're going to continue to see less attention paid to the Russia-Ukraine war. And then in addition, you have the President Trump's general animosity toward anything relating to Ukraine, and you pile on that with respect to the U.S. relationship with Israel that is far more so important than is the U.S. relations with Ukraine. And then lastly, the fact that countries look at Israel and Iran fighting as more impactful to their economies because of the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz.
Now, in terms of those rising oil prices, what is the impact of that in terms of Russia's war funding?
Increase in oil prices help Russia, and at the same time, they increase the value of the ruble to the dollar, which makes Russians happy. But you still have the price cap that the European Union and the US has for Russian oil. Almost all of Russian oil goes to China and goes to India. They're already getting favorable pricing. So Russia immediately isn't going to see a windfall profits because a lot of these contracts are multi-month, some multi-year. The price ranges are set. But psychologically, it's a boost for the Russian government because they can say, see, the price of what people want is higher because of the U.S. And Israel attacking Iran, and they're also able to say, hey, remember, about 10 days ago, Iran didn't attack Israel. Israel attacked Iran. Iran responded. And how is it Iran's looking like the bad guy? So, the Russians are quite happy today to see the spotlight off of them and on to Israel and Iran.
Now, turning our attention back to Kyiv, how concerned are Ukrainian officials, especially that military aid is being redirected?
They're concerned. Ukraine has had for quite a while two big problems. One is a consistency of military hardware getting in country, and then from getting in country in the West to getting to where it's needed in the East, so logistics. And second is the number of people fighting on behalf of Ukraine. They just don't have the bodies. And so when you're sending tanks and you're sending missiles and rockets and RPGs and howitzers and all that, they need people to run them. And that's one of the reasons why Ukraine has has transitioned to this being a drone war, because drone wars don't require as many people. And the people can also be hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, and still impact the battlefield, both within the territory of Ukraine where Russian troops are, and then also within the Russian Federation territory itself. So, Ukraine is, it's a real challenge. Also, some U.S. military focus is transitioning toward helping Israel, which the Ukrainians don't like. And then the Ukrainians know that NATO, the 32 members of NATO, the 27-member European Union, they really can't step up and deliver a lot of product immediately. And mostly what Ukraine needs now is missile defense systems to prevent the drones, the missiles, the rockets from hitting cities. And there just aren't that many systems that governments either have to give or they have and they will give. Most of them want to keep them for themselves.
Really great to have your insights there. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. Now, a Russian drone attack on the Ukrainian port city of Odessa overnight killed one person and injured at least 14 others, according to local officials. The strikes damaged high-rise buildings, a university and key railway infrastructure, including Odessa's main station. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 86 drones overnight. 34 were shut down, while others were disrupted or were unarmed decoys. Despite these defences, drones hit at least 8 locations across Ukraine. Odessa, Ukraine's largest Black Sea port, has faced regular missile and drone attacks throughout the war. Denmark will continue preparing Ukraine for European Union membership despite Hungary blocking negotiations. This comment comes as the Nordic country takes over the presidency of the European Council from the 1st of July. That's according to the European Affairs Minister, who said that Denmark would put pressure on Hungary, while at the same time do everything it can to make Ukraine continue with necessary reform work. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has strongly opposed providing NATO military and EU aid to Ukraine, saying the country's EU membership would destroy Hungarian farmers and the wider economy. NATO leaders are set to agree on a new defence spending target at the upcoming summit of the alliance next week in The Hague. Some analysts say that the sticking point might be the timeline of the new target's implementation.
NATO leaders are poised to adopt a new defence spending goal of 5% of GDP at the summit in The Hague. A move, analysts say, would mark a major diplomatic win for US President Donald Trump and reaffirm the alliance's unity. The proposed target includes 3.5% for core military spending and an additional 1.5% for infrastructure, cyber defence and industry investments.
And it is a summit that reinforces NATO's credibility, its leadership and unity. It will be very much focused on 5% target, and that will be the most relevant to say right now, that it will be the focus of the discussion and also the outcome of the NATO summit at The Hague.
Trump, who has long criticised allies for underspending on defence, is expected to welcome the agreement as a personal victory.
Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah. Well, you can't do it at 2%. I mean, at 2%, every country, if you're going to have a country in a regular military, you're at 4%.
However, experts caution that the effectiveness of the pledge depends on the timeline for implementation.
The test of the target will be the timeline. If the implication timeline is actually given at the summit, because there are different perceptions of what it could be. Is it 2032, 2030, 2035? Depending on which member states spends how much on the defense spending, they have different perceptions of how and when they can achieve 5%.
The summit communique is expected to be brief to minimize the risk of internal disagreements. It will aim to highlight NATO's commitment to increased defence investment and alliance solidarity.
The United Nations says poverty and inequality are driving more conflicts around the world. It's urging countries to step up investment and financial support ahead of a major development summit next week.
Development is the first line of defence against conflict. That's what the United Nations chief told the Security Council on Thursday. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the number of people living in extreme poverty in conflict-affected areas are set to rise, and warns that poverty, inequality and underdevelopment are directly contributing to increasing global violence and instability.
Poverty breeds despair. Despair fuels unrest. And unrest tears at the fabric of societies, feeding mistrust, fear and violence. It is no coincidence that 9 of the 10 countries with the lowest human development indicators are currently in a state of conflict. 40% of the 700 million people living in extreme poverty live in conflict-affected or fragile settings. And the situation is only getting worse.
He stressed that peace must be built through access to education, healthcare and opportunity, not only diplomacy. With the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development set to begin next week in Spain, Guterres is calling for increased investment, urgent debt relief, and a reformed global financial system to better support vulnerable nations. The United Nations Development Programme says progress in development has hugely declined.
The 2025 UNDP Human Development Report shows the sharpest global drop in human development in over 2 decades. For the first time in 35 years, progress in human development has slowed so significantly that over half of the world's poorest countries have yet to recover to pre-pandemic levels. This means that over 1 billion people live in acute multidimensional poverty.
Representatives from the African Union Commission and Guyana's Foreign Ministry also underscored the need to integrate development into peace-building efforts. They said lasting peace depends on tackling exclusion, inequality, and the conditions that allow conflict to thrive.
A powerful hurricane slammed southern Mexico, uprooting trees, damaging homes and leaving thousands without power. Hurricane Eric made landfall Thursday morning as a Category 3 storm and left a path of destruction through Oaxaca and Guerrero as it weakened to a tropical storm.
Hurricane Eric ripped through southern Mexico, battering the state of Oaxaca with winds strong enough to tear tin roofs off homes and snap banana plantations in half. More than 120,000 people were left without electricity, and at least 15 road sections were disrupted on Thursday.
The houses have been the most affected. Some businesses had roofs made of branches that were blown away, and the palm thatched structures collapsed.
In San Jose del Progreso, residents woke up to scenes of devastation. Entire plantations of banana and palm trees flattened.
Tengo 64 años.
I am 64 years old and I had never seen this. I hadn't seen it before what happened last night. It used to rain a lot, but now everything got really ugly in a short time.
There are people trapped on Chacagua Island. They were asking for help. We're trying to get access to help them.
It's total destruction. The only option is to burn what's left. Banana trees, lemon trees, everything's gone.
As a result of the storm, at least 2 people are being reported to have been killed. One, a young child, after floodwaters swept them away in Guerrero. Authorities credit swift evacuations and a coordinated emergency response for keeping the death toll low. The hurricane has now weakened to a tropical storm after making landfall, leaving a trail of devastation.
Kyrgyzstan has hosted the Collective Security Treaty Organization's first ever cybersecurity conference. Delegates from across the CSTO bloc gathered to tackle rising cyber threats from espionage to online terrorism. With over 5 million cyber attacks recorded in Kyrgyzstan alone last year, 70% of which were neutralized and the remainder deemed low risk, leaders called for stronger regional cooperation and warned of a growing cyber arms race. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk warned that Armenia's deepening ties with the EU could cost up to $6 billion in lost trade with Russia by the end of 2025. He stressed that Armenia cannot stay in both the EU and the Eurasian Economic Union simultaneously, as doing so would effectively sever its tariff-free access to Russia's market. Despite this, Overchuk credited Armenia's EA-EU membership with strong growth, noting the growth of per capita GDP. He called for regulatory reform and expanded border capacity to stabilise and revive Russia-Armenia trade channels. Russia wants to expand energy cooperation with Kazakhstan. The Russian president said that the two countries are also discussing joint access to third markets. Our correspondent Fariza Kalamurzina has more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed Moscow's interest in expanding energy cooperation with Kazakhstan. During a meeting with heads of international news agencies, he emphasized that the countries are discussing not only domestic cooperation, but also joint access to third country markets, particularly in the oil and gas sectors. Special attention is being given to logistics issues, especially the organization of export routes for Kazakh oil abroad. While specific destinations haven't yet been named, it's known that currently 80% of Kazakhstan's oil is shipped to Europe, including Germany, Italy, France and other countries. The main route is the Caspian pipeline, which passes through Russian territory. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, analysts say Moscow has increasingly used the Caspian pipeline as a tool for political pressure. Deliveries of Kazakh oil have been repeatedly restricted, forcing Astana to look for alternative routes. However, despite these challenges, Kazakhstan has relied on this infrastructure for over 20 years. It's important also to note that since the war began, Russia has partially or fully suspended operations of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium 6 times. In February, the CPC facility was even struck by Ukrainian drones. Kyiv confirmed the attack and warned that similar actions could continue. Experts emphasize that despite these geopolitical risks, the Caspian pipeline remains the most economically effective route for Kazakhstan. It continues to be a reliable and cost-efficient method for oil transport. Kazakhstan is also bound by long-term contracts with several Russian companies, limiting its ability to quickly switch to alternative export routes. Nearly all of its oil production is already contracted, making rapid increases in output extremely difficult. Fariza Kalimurzana, A News, in Astana, Kazakhstan.
Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have completed the Caspian Breeze 2025 joint military exercises held in the Kazakh sector of the Caspian Sea near Aktau. The exercises included live fire exercises targeting sea and air threats, destruction of floating mines, air defence drills and the asymmetric threat responses such as the search and rescue of distressed ships and aircrafts. The second and final day of Baku ID brought together global investors, startup founders and innovation leaders. From new partnerships and investment deals to bold ideas in future-focused projects, the event showcased the growing role of Baku as a regional innovation hub.
But when you present your work, it's a different thing.
Baku ID is where startup founders find their big break, investors discover the next game changer, and participants uncover endless inspiration. It's a dynamic platform that turns dreamers into doers and their ideas into impact.
It's the second and final day of Baku ID, but the energy hasn't slowed down. From high-level meetings to hands-on pitches and global conversations, the 2025 edition once again raised the bar. What makes this year stand out? The growing international footprint.
Every year Baku ID has been bigger and bigger, and every year Baku ID had a certain agenda. This year it's the biggest we've had so far in terms of the guests we were able to attract from a very diverse geographical area as well. We have delegations from the Middle East, from Egypt, from Europe, and this is what's most exciting, that Baku ID has become a platform that doesn't just bring the local and regional ecosystem together, but the global.
As the tech scene in the region matures, so does investor interest. At this year's Baku ID, connections aren't just being made, they're being formalized. One of the major milestones today was a memorandum signing between Ard Venture, Sabah Hub and Sabah Fund to strengthen cross-border collaboration and build a shared startup infrastructure between Turkey and Azerbaijan.
Baku ID'de bulunmamızdaki temel sebeplerden birisi
one of the main reasons for our presence at Baku ID is to act as a bridge by bringing the technology investment ecosystem we have developed in Turkey to our brother country, Azerbaijan. We aim to facilitate a two-way investment flow, encouraging investors in Turkey to invest in companies based in Baku, and enabling investors in Baku to invest in startups in Turkey. In cooperation with Sabah Hub, we have launched an initiative to establish a technology investment office in Baku. Through this, we intend to create a shared platform with physical spaces in both Baku and Turkey to support investment and technology transfer between the two countries.
Bir platformda yatırım ve teknoloji transferi yapmak için iki ülke arasında böyle bir sürece girdik kendileri.
At events like Baku ID, it's not just about what's happening today, it's about where things are going tomorrow. And Sabah City is one of the most ambitious steps yet. Designed to power Azerbaijan's innovation ecosystem through cutting-edge infrastructure and education, It offers a glimpse into what the future could look like for research, AI and startups in the country.
Its contribution to the innovation and scientific research ecosystem primarily lies in the infrastructure it will provide. Within this framework, the construction of new and modern scientific research facilities, artificial intelligence laboratories, classrooms, co-working centers for startups, and other infrastructure units is planned. The project also includes institutional support, offering startups access to various incentives such as tax and customs exemptions.
Several startups will secure new funding today, but some are already reaping the rewards. Their vision has evolved over just 2 days at Baku ID.
I am the founder of the BioShell. At BioShell, we are transforming the hazelnut shells into bioplastics, which is going to cut the carbon emissions and prevent the plastic pollution as well. And at Baku ID, we are today have a stand here, and it's a great opportunity for us to have a connection with the key players in the region and expand our vision as well. And as we attended here, I noticed that our startup and our technology isn't just limited in Azerbaijan. And I saw that how we can expand our vision and our technology in the globe as well.
Baku ID 2025 ends with new deals, bold ideas and a clear message. The future of innovation starts here.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.